stroke is a real eye-opener. My wife went over and above. The things she did, I mean, it was only when I got to the ACU I realized I could not talk. When the EMTs were asking me questions, I thought I was answering them, but now I'm not so sure. So my name is Roger Okewole. I'm a civil engineer by profession. I have almost 30 years of construction management experience in the United States of America in various industry sectors. I've done everything from airports to high-rise commercial to high-rise residential to corporate campuses. I'm a senior project manager, and yep, that's my. And another hat I wear, I'm a graphic artist, so I run a graphic arts company.
So thank you for coming on to talk with me today, Roger.
Yes.
And so we're just gonna get straight into it. So what were you diagnosed with, and what age did you get that diagnosis?
So I was diagnosed with an intracranial hemorrhage, which is what I learned later was a brain bleed, a stroke. And it happened on September 7, 2021. So that, at that point in time, I was 50 and a half years old, 50 years and change.
And what was that day like?
So on that day, I started the day with extreme fatigue. I powered through the fatigue to commute to work. By the time I got to work, I had a steadily worsening headache. And when things got really bad, my vision started blurring. Things got progressively bad. And when things went terminal, when I started experiencing vertigo, I was unable to walk straight. I got to my office. I'm still not sure how I did this. And the office actually started to heave like I was on a storm-tossed ship. You know, when you're on a ship and it's in the storm.
Yeah.
And the office started to heave, and I eventually fell on the floor. At some point in time, I remember trying to get to the bathroom because I felt like my stomach was heaving, and it was down the hall from my office. So let me describe where the building was. It's a 21-story building in Manhattan on Wall Street. My office was in the basement. No one else had offices in the basement. I had a big office in the basement. I was senior project manager. The contractor's office was on the 5th floor, and the custodian's office was on the 13th floor. And there were some workmen on that floor. So when my stomach started heaving, I wanted to leave my office and walk to the bathroom, which was down the hall from my office. But what stopped me was I didn't want to look like I was drunk to the site workers, because when I was walking to the door, I realized I was walking like higgledy-piggledy. So I didn't want to appear drunk to the site workers. And of course, being a construction site, there are very strict rules against drug use or alcohol use, because some of these site workers are knuckleheads. And I still was conscious enough to say, okay, you don't want to look like a knucklehead. So I still remember saying, don't go to the bathroom. And that saved my life, Meg, because if I'd gone to the bathroom and passed out, as I continue my story, I'd been found dead. So I was able to crawl back across the floor. By this time, I couldn't walk anymore. So when I went to the door, I fell down. I said, I'm not going to the bathroom. I fell down. By this time, the floor seemed to heave, you know? And I crawled across the floor. And by this time, I puked. So when I decided I'm not going to the bathroom, the puke just came out. And I'm trying to keep the puke off my shirt because I had a meeting to run, but there was no way of that. And I'm crawling through all that mess back to my phone. I don't know how I still remember all. So I crawled through back to my phone, and I hit the number for my wife. And I thought I called and told her what was wrong. I thought I did. But later on, months later, she told me she couldn't understand a word I was saying. She said I was just mumbling. You know, she couldn't hear a word I was saying, but she heard enough to be alarmed. She knew something was very, very bad. I could hear her saying, Roger, what's wrong? Roger, what's wrong? And I thought I was saying, something's very wrong. I'm puking, I have this headache, and something's very wrong. So she says all she heard was mumbling. But she called my head office. And unfortunately, I work for a Jewish company. September 7, 2021 is Rosh Hashanah. So they was very observant. So there was only a skeleton staff in the head company. But somebody who was at the desk there got the phone call, called back to the building and alerted the contractor, who in turn alerted the building custodian. And they both rushed down to the basement from the 13th or 5th floors and found me. By that time, I'm on the floor, lying in my own puke.
Wow.
And they called EMTs.
Mm-hmm.
So the EMTs came, and the further challenge there was it's construction sites. There's a construction fence around the building. And the EMTs did not have immediate access to the building. They first had to access the building, then come down to figure out how to get down to the basement. And I'll tell you, after that incident, no one was ever allowed on any floor of the building by themselves again. They made a new rule that nobody's allowed on any floor of the building by themselves again. Because after the situation with me, because the contractor, the head of the contractors, was so scared by the fact that he would have come down for the 1 o'clock meeting with me.
Yeah.
And he would have come down and he found me dead on the floor. That spooked him.
Yes.
And even worse, they'd come down for the meeting, and if I'd made it to the bathroom, that they've been looking for me, and I've been lying in the bathroom for hours. So it's just by chance that everything happened the way it did, but just God's blessing, just God's blessing. But yeah, but that's how things. So the EMTs came, they took me out on the stretcher and took me up to the street. By that time, I was completely out of it. Completely out of it. Things just went rapidly downhill. So the amount of awareness I had to call my wife was the last lucid action I took. Until today, I don't know how I was able to do it. I really don't know how.
So do you remember how long it took to get from your job to the hospital? Because I know like when they talk about strokes and what we learned in school, they say that time is of the essence with a stroke.
I will tell you this. I lost concept of time from that time until a good 2 or 3 weeks later. I didn't have a concept of time. So well after outside of when I was removed from the intensive care unit, when I was still in the rehabilitation center, I'd call my poor wife at like 2 a.m. asking, why aren't you here? Isn't it visit time? Why aren't you here? I'd ask for the phone. The nurses would bring the phone to me. I'd call her. I'd ask them to call her. They would not want to call her. I was insist they call her. I said, why are you here? She says, Roger, it's 2 a.m. I had no concept of time. None. So I couldn't answer how long it took me from the building site to the hospital. And what was made worse is I was taken to the medical center near the site on Wall Street, which is way downtown. Anybody who listens to this recording that knows New York will understand what I'm saying. So if you picture New York is very long, and Wall Street is at the bottom of the long part. But the stroke center was on 50th Street, which is past Times Square, past that whole Times Square area where they do the ball drop. Times Square, the way they do the ball drop is like 42nd Street. The stroke center was on 50th Street, so that's uptown of that. So taken from the stroke center to the medical center at Wall Street to the stroke center on 50th Street. So there was prolonged time that was taken for my treatment, for my actual treatment. And from when I got to the stroke center, I was immediately admitted to the intensive care unit. Immediately.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So when you and I first spoke, I
Yeah.
told you that there is no reason why I am talking to you like this right now. And I'll tell you this. Doctors do not like to admit they don't know. They have come up with all kinds of reasons for why I made the recovery I've made. All kinds of reasons, except for the fact that they don't know. And when I say it's God's blessing, they always hem and haw. But you can believe what you want. That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. But I believe what I believe.
It's definitely a miracle. Like,
amen.
I completely agree with you. And I've never been to New York City, but I also know like another thing that you guys have to deal with in New York is traffic.
Yes.
Getting around. So it's not just getting you to the hospital,
No.
it's also like the intense amount of traffic.
Yes. I can't answer this much. At the time when they're taking me, it would not have been rush hour. So the traffic would have been minutely less, but there's still traffic. You still have to make it from Wall Street to the 50th Street area. So there's still traffic, but yeah, but you still have to deal with some of that.
So, what was it like when you finally regained consciousness in the ICU? Like, what was your treatment like? What was like life after that?
So I'll tell you this: an ICU is an excruciatingly scary and lonely place for a patient. It's very, very scary. It is concerned with your survival only. It's comfortable, but it's not comfortable the way a hotel is comfortable. It's comfortable for your survival. It is very, very, very scary. Very, very scary. And especially for someone like me who is very action oriented and was unable to think straight, unable to walk, unable to talk. It's, I told you that when I spoke to my wife on the phone in the office, I thought I was talking to her. It was only when I got to the ACU I realized I could not talk. I realized I could not talk. I didn't realize I couldn't talk until I got to the ICU. When the EMTs were asking me questions, I thought I was answering them, but now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure I was answering them. I think that they were going off of experience. They're looking at each other and saying things. They're going off of experience. Like one of them said, ICH, so intracranial hemorrhage. And I was asking, what's ICH? What's ICH? I thought they were not answering me, but I realized now they couldn't hear what I was saying. So when you get to the ICU, it's very scary, very, very lonely. And it was made harder by the fact that I was not in my right mind. So like they will give me ECG treatments and I had seizure hallucinations and I had to be tethered to the bed. They had to tie me to bed because I kept trying to get out of the bed because I was convinced that something was very wrong. They put this headdress on you with these electrodes. The basis of the hallucinations is too ridiculous to get into. I don't know whether I should get into it, but I don't know. I don't know whether I should get into it. I don't. But when they tethered me to the bed, I was convinced that I was going to be imprisoned forever. Like I just could see I was in this prison, and I felt like this is the construction machine. I could feel the construction machines digging dirt in, burying the room to bury me forever. And I was never going to see my wife and daughter. I was so convinced, so convinced. And I'll tell you this, Meg, my brain convinced me so clearly of this that till today, I'm not entirely sure it wasn't true. I'm not entirely sure till today that it was. And I say these things to say, if any caregiver ever watches this video, you need to understand what this patient is going through because these things are real for this person. So till today, I'm not entirely 100% sure that those hallucinations were not true. And I can still picture the room I was in, like the prison room I was in. And my brother Simon came the next day with my wife, and my wife came when they left me the night before. I was somewhat stable. When they came the morning after, I was tethered to the bed. And my wife said, "What the heck is this?"
Yeah.
And my brother is a doctor. And I begged him to speak to the nurses to get them to take the bonds off, take the bonds off. And you asked what was particularly tough? When he hesitated, I became convinced that he was on their side because he's a doctor and they're nurses. So I started cursing at him. Got very angry, cursed at him. And I remained guilty about that for a very, very long time afterwards. I felt very, very bad about that for a very, very long time afterwards. Another part that was very, very hard was not very hard on me, but my mom and my brothers, all my brothers, I have four brothers, were very close. When they were waiting for word on whether I'd need brain surgery, my mom is a retired nurse and she knows what that looks like for a stroke victim. You get those scars and get that bump in your head, which is the least of your problems. But they did not, but you never, any surgery is risky, but brain surgery is riskier than many. And they didn't know whether I'd need brain surgery. And they were waiting for word. And she says that when they found out I would not need brain surgery, there was a huge amount of relief. But of course, I was not aware of any of that. I told myself I would not cry at this video.
So in total, like how long were you like at the ICU? Then
Mm-hmm.
when transition to rehab, like all of that in terms of getting back to like your healing process, getting back to your normal self?
So I was in ICU. So ICU, I learned when I was in ICU, I learned a lot of this afterwards. When I was in ICU, I was not learning, I was not capable of learning anything. So
Yeah.
ICU is just to get you out of danger. Person could die to get you out of, so once they get you out of danger, they monitor you. So I was in ICU for like a week. You must understand, I did not have any way of measuring time. So I'm just guessing. I was in ICU for like 8 days, something like 8 days, 8 or 9 days, something like that. And when I was in ICU, my wife would tell me, this is what they're doing. They're stepping you down from ICU to this stage to this stage. I didn't understand what she was telling me. I just nod. I just nod. She was just telling me for telling sake. But you can understand, I just wanted to get out of ICU because there were some patients beside me that were in extreme distress. And it made it worse. It made it worse. You know you're right, man. The person behind you is hallucinating also and is screaming with pain. It made it worse. It's terrible. But after that, I went to the rehabilitation center. When they took me from ICU, to show you how confused I was, I thought I was going home. That shows you how confused. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. And I actually thought I was going home. That shows you how befuddled I was. No, there's no home. You're going to the rehab center. So they took me to the rehab center, which was the rehab. So my wife, this is germane to the data discussion I was going to have. My wife and my mom were having to come from New Jersey to Manhattan, 50th Street every day to see me. If I didn't see them, I'm calling for them. Where's my wife? Where's my mom? Because I didn't want to be there by myself. Because I was just scared. But it was taking a real toll. So the rehab center was here in West Orange, near where I live. And that made things a bit easier. So I was at the rehab center inpatient for about a month. And from inpatient, I went to outpatient rehab for another 2.5 or so months. And it was when I was in inpatient rehab that I started regaining my sense of time. Only started. It was a very gradual process. Very, very gradual.
So during that time, because you talked about your mother
Mm-hmm.
and your wife coming to be with you during this process, like every day.
Mm.
So was your wife working full time before you had the stroke, or like was she able to work part time to accommodate your new schedule? Um, what was that like? I think you mentioned your mom was retired.
For the sake of this discussion,
Uh-huh.
I will say that in many ways we were privileged because my wife works full time, but was able to take time off. No, not time off, work from home while I was in this situation. But the particulars of that I could not tell you because I was not capable of comprehending anything.
Okay.
I regressed to, it might have as well have been a toddler that had the stroke. Mm-hmm. So I was not capable of addressing anything.
Okay.
I cannot state that clearly enough. Okay. So and my mom was retired and she had just moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee, but she moved into a home. Thankfully, we have space in the house. She moved here in this house here, and she was able to stay here. She said was not going to go back to Tennessee, and she stayed here. My brother Simon went back to Tennessee. My brother Dimeji drove up from Pennsylvania. He went back home. My brother Richard, he visited. He was not able to visit. My brother Alan's in San Diego. Is furthest away. He was not able to visit. But I knew people were around me. But I was very lucky that way. Very lucky.
So then how long were you in like the outpatient rehab before getting the clear to be able to go home?
I was in outpatient rehab. Outpatient was I was going home every day. So outpatient, I was outpatient for maybe 3 months. 3 months, yeah. Something like 3 months.
So I think I confused it. So inpatient was when you're in the facility and
Yes,
you're starting your rehab. And
yes,
then outpatient is you live at home, but you come to the facility
yes,
to get your rehab treatment.
yes. The inpatient was physical therapy, cognitive therapy, yeah, physical and cognitive therapy, and the outpatient patient was the same thing, cognitive and physical, both.
And so that took 3 months
Yes,
before you finally got the clear from the doctor.
yes.
Okay. So then once you got that clear, did you just immediately go back to work? Or were you still like, did you still take it slow? Were you still at home, getting back into your groove of things?
That's a good question. And again, there's a bit of privilege there. My work had problems replacing me, which is which is a stroke is a real eye opener. My replacements at the project I was on both eventually got fired, and they wanted me back. And the rehab center stated they wanted me for X amount of time, and my work insisted I come back before that time. And I'll tell you, looking back, looking back, I was clearly not ready because there's certain basics to my industry that I look back at now that I did not know. Like they'd gone from my brain. Like I learned while I was in cognitive therapy how to account for the fact that I could no longer do math off head. I used to be able to very quickly do math off head. And between you and I, well, this video kind of makes it public, but my math skills have never recovered to what they were prior to the stroke. And what part of my cognitive therapy was to teach me that there's nothing wrong with using a calculator. But the other things that were kind of basic industry knowledge that I found out on the job that I did not know anymore. And every once in a while, I'll get sudden anxiety spells when I was on the job. So when I went back, I was not ready. But I did go back kind of immediately. But yeah, I did go back kind of immediately.
So like on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
you looked like you were good, like you were
Yes, good point.
healthy, back to the old Roger. But as you went back to your job, as you were getting back into the system of life, you realized like, oh, this is a challenge. I used to do that. I can't figure out how to do it anymore. I don't know.
My appearance was very, very deceptive. Very, very, very deceptive. Very deceptive. And if even my brother Simon, he was, I only found out later, much, much, much later, how scared my brother and my mom were. My brother Simon and my mom were, because they had the benefit of knowing what to be afraid of. Because my mom is a nurse, and a retired nurse, and my brother is a doctor. I don't know that my wife really knew what to be scared of. And my brother's looking at me the whole time, knowing what could happen. And when he was not seeing it, he was very, very beyond pleasantly surprised. Because I don't have, it's very hard for me to mimic what it could have been like because I went through it. But whenever I see someone who has had a stroke, who has had the typical after effects, it really strikes at my heart. It really strikes at my heart. In fact, the wife of a family friend, the husband of a family friend, I don't even know this man, passed away after a stroke he had. And I don't know him, and I burst into tears because I wanted to meet him, to tell him, to just counsel him. But I never got to meet him. It affected me that much. But when I went back to work, I'll tell you my appearance was very deceptive. Very, very, very deceptive. Because my energy levels were very low. My cognitive skills, while I'd finished the outpatient, were very, very developed. But you must keep in mind, when I started outpatient, I couldn't tell time. I remember being given one of those blank circles with numbers, some of the numbers, and I was asked to finish the numbers for a clock. And I could only do like 3 or 4 of the numbers. And even those I couldn't do properly. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wait, I can't do the numbers on the clock. And I just person, anything would make you cry. My emotional state was that of a toddler. That's why I say when you're going through these things, you become like a toddler. A toddler will just cry.
Yeah.
My emotional state became that of a toddler. Any little, and also anger. I'll say this for the caretakers. Anger is another part of that. I'll just get angry at things. My poor wife, she went through that too. You get angry about things, knowing you should not get angry about those things, knowing that you're being unreasonable, but you can't help it. That was the thing. That was the case.
How did this diagnosis affect you financially?
Well, thankfully, again, privilege. My insurance covered immediate costs. I also had long-term disability coverage. My colleagues started up a GoFundMe that covered ancillary costs. I told her that my wife was having to come, and mother was having to come from West Orange, New Jersey to Manhattan to see me every day. Because if she don't come, I was calling. I was calling. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Because I was terrified when I didn't have someone around me. And you got to cover. It had to be Uber. It had to be Uber because she's already emotional. To be driving yourself under those circumstances is not a good situation. So she get an Uber. And she managed to GoFundMe because I was not capable of managing anything. So she managed to GoFundMe. They turned over the funds to her. And it came up to a nice little sum. Nice little sum. Don't ask me how much it was. She told me, and she turned over the paperwork to me. I still have it somewhere, but I've forgotten where it is. I've forgotten where it is. But I will say this. Afterwards, I had follow-up scans because one good thing about the treatment center, I went to Cornell Weill Medical Center, they go over and above. So well after I was discharged, I was getting CT scans on my brain where the lesion is, and I still have the lesion in my brain. It's still there. And I had scans and I had to pay for those out of pocket. And that came up to a pretty penny.
Do you have an idea of how much that may have been?
Yeah, by that time I started my brain was starting to come together. So that was costing me like $3,500 each time. So I had to do that 3 times, came to almost $10,000. But Meg, that saying God will provide?
Yes. Yes.
Anybody watching this video can believe anything they want. I don't know where I found the money. I don't know where I found the money. I certainly don't have $10,000 lying around, but I paid it. That's my answer. And I did not use my credit card. That's my answer. Anybody can believe anything they want. That's my answer. I'm testifying.
You talked about having to get the scans done, and each scan costing about 3,500.
Yes.
So was that something that happened for a short term, while you were getting acute treatment, or is that something that you had to do it regularly, every year you had to go in to get a scan or two, or do you still?
The first one was the scariest because the first one was the first day I got to ICU. And I can remember being more or less manhandled. It felt like being manhandled. They had a team of people carry me from the first bed I was admitted to onto this trolley, and I was wheeled to the scan room. That big tube, and they roll you into it. And Meg, the situation I was in, it felt like I was being put in a tube and going under the sea. Nothing was making sense, and that one I was not aware of at all. The ones I'm talking about is the ones after I've been discharged, where I'll get the notice that we are checking you for a scan. This is a post being sent out of the ICU scan. This is well after I'm out of outpatient, because at least one of those scans I had to leave my workplace to go and get the scan. And as you can imagine, I was not playing with those scans. I was not going to miss those scans. So I went and got the scans. And yeah, so there were at least three of them that were after I was discharged.
And did you have to get on any sort of like other treatment following your stroke? Like medications and stuff like that?
Yes, I still take a lot of medications. Till today. Every morning and every night, I have a bunch of medications. Like I've got one of those pill boxes that I always associate with old age pensioners. I have one of those. And one of my therapies was my wife used to sort the pills into the different pockets of the pill bottle. And my therapists were like, why is your wife doing that? You should be doing that. And with my 2-year-old toddler regressed mind, I was like, well, she can do it, you know? And they're like, no, you do it. And they train me, they use beads, different colored beads to signify the different kinds of pills. And they give it a different regimen. And one of my therapies was to arrange the beads into the different, days and times of the dosages. And I still remember once I was at home, I'm doing it. My wife is watching me, that poor woman. She's watching me, and I'm making a complete and utter mess of this thing. And I was getting more and more frustrated, more and more and more frustrated. And at the back of my mind is, why doesn't she just do it? Why doesn't she just do it? And some things I'm saying to you, Stacey, because I don't know whether any caregiver will watch this video. So I'm saying to me, and she is looking at me, he can do it. It doesn't help him if I do it for him. It's like a kid figuring out how to tie their shoes. The kid has to figure out how to tie the shoes themselves. So I can remember I was sitting at a dining room table downstairs, and I'm trying to do this thing, and I can't figure it out. And I'm getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And the more angry I got, the worse I was doing. I felt like taking the whole thing and throwing it across the room, but I realized that makes no sense. That makes no sense. So I eventually figured it out. And I'm looking at her, she sat there looking at me. I'm like, but yeah, what are you gonna do? But yeah, but that I'm on a bunch of so I was under the care of a neurologist and also my general practitioner. I'm under the care of two different doctors right now till today. And I'm still on anti-seizure medication till today. My general practitioner has put me on a bunch of blood sugar medications and blood pressure medications, and those, and cholesterol medication, because we're still not sure exactly what caused the stroke. We're still not sure exactly what caused it. I was not obese. The usual traditional eye candy things that cause a stroke. Yeah, symptoms. We're still not sure what happened. So we just attack everything right now. Yeah.
So do you have like a rough estimate of how much your total treatment was?
It was very easily upwards of $40,000. Very easily upwards of $40,000. I'm very comfortable giving you that number, and I'm sure I'm underestimating it. Very easily so.
And I know when we spoke earlier, you had said that you had like good health insurance. So like, do you have an idea of how much from that amount like the health insurance company covered, and how much you had to take care of out of pocket and things like that? Did you have a deductible?
Yes. I can say to you, the health insurance would have covered 80% of those costs. Again, we're doing rough estimates. Rough estimates. So yeah, I will say this. Working in construction, I always made sure to take the highest possible tier of health insurance, because construction is very dangerous. I've worked with colleagues. This has actually happened to a colleague of mine, that the day before we were doing benefit selection, he was wondering whether to bother to select the highest tier. The day after benefit selection, he was up on a ladder, went down a step, his ankle blew up, and he was in rehab for a year. And that's normal in the construction industry. That's not abnormal. Construction is very dangerous. So I will say, again, I had the privilege of working in an industry where the insurance benefits are usually top tier because you're working on a construction. Even though I was Mr. Senior Project Manager, I'm still working on site. So you just don't know what you're going to be involved in. So I had very good insurance coverage. And I also had long-term disability. So that covered me for being out of work.
So with your long-term disability, like how much did it cover? Because I know with disability, they give you like a portion, like a truncated portion of your income. So was it like, sometimes they say like 50%, sometimes they say 60%, like it depends on the organization that you work with.
If I was my wife to tell me.
Okay. All right. That's
she
fine.
she said it was like 50-60%. So we did have money coming in. We did, and trust me, every penny was needed. I don't want to give the impression that we're living in lack of luxury, because that's not the impression. What I try to say when I say privilege is that I know the stories that are out there, and I know how blessed we were. I give thanks every day.
So are you still on long-term disability or
Not at all. Not at all. I'm not on anything.
Okay. And then
and that will come up later. That will come up later.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking.
And another thing you had shared was the GoFundMe.
Yes.
So how did that come about, and how beneficial was that to assisting you and your family during the season?
So the GoFundMe was, remember I told you the contractors were contacted on the fifth floor of the building? The project manager of the contractors started GoFundMe on my behalf. Okay. My wife did not do it. She was too distressed to do it. So she did not do it. But he gave her control of it because I could not. And then she used that for the ancillary costs. So all of the Ubers, all of the trips to go to see me at the hospital from West Orange, that came to a bit. She's got to get there. She's got to come home, all that stuff. She monitored everything.
Wow, that was amazing that your
Yes.
job was able to like put that together on behalf of you and your family. Because yes. Though I have never personally experienced a GoFundMe, I do know that putting it out is not an easy task. Like putting yourself out there, asking for help, that you're essentially like you're begging, like you're also losing your privacy during that season to get any type of assistance to get through what you're currently going through with your family. It takes a lot of humility and it takes a lot of courage.
I'll tell you this: if you Google my name, the GoFundMe is still up there. These things don't disappear from Google.
Yeah.
It does strike at the pride. But I'll say this to you, Meg. A stroke will bring things to sharp relief. It will bring things into sharp relief. It gives you perspective real quick. Real quick. I remember one time when I was recovering, I'm sitting in downstairs in my living room, and I'm thinking to myself, you know how sometimes you have these stupid, men more than women, have these stupid thoughts? And my mom is sitting across from me. And I said to her, can we attribute my quick recovery from the stroke as it was a minor stroke? And keep in mind, she was here. She saw me. And this woman, I'm her eldest son, I thought she was going to physically attack me for saying that. A minor stroke. A minor stroke. You think that was minor? So you're talking about the pride. I won't lie to you. There is pride involved. But when you're in the situation, you don't have pride. Meg, I had a bottle for urine. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I've always been somebody who lifted weights, and I was convinced that I could go to the bathroom myself. I refused to use the bedpan. I refused. I would say, if you stand me up, hospitals have those bars by the walls.
Yeah.
If you stand me up and get me to one of those bars, I'll be able to drag myself to the bathroom. I'm not using the bedpan. And everybody there, including my mom, knew I was talking nonsense. Knew I was talking nonsense. But my mom knows me well enough to know I was dead serious. I did not believe I could not do it. And I have overcome a lot of obstacles to get where I am today. I'm an absolute pit bull at life, an absolute pit bull. The things I've gone through in America, before I came to America and in America to get to where I am now, to be sitting in the house I am now, it's not come easily. And to be put in a situation where I could not control anything. A GoFundMe was the least of my problems. The least of my problems. Pride was the least of my problems. I'm in a situation where I want to pee. You just let it go. Not to get graphic, but sometimes the connection to the pee bottle will come free. You just have to deal with it. I'll get so lonely. You talk about pride. I'll get so lonely, I'll deliberately have my hand or my foot go over the side of the bed just so somebody would brush against it to make myself feel like I had people around me. You think a GoFundMe was my problem at that point in time? I didn't care. That's the kind of perspective that you hope you never have. And I've seen people say, oh, if I was in a situation, I wouldn't do it. I just laugh. I just laugh. I saw this TV program a little while ago that this tough guy gets admitted to hospital, decides he doesn't want to be there anymore. He's on drip. He's in intensive care. He's a tough guy. It was that show in Yellowstone, starring Kevin Costner. He's a tough guy. He tells the nurse, I'm done with this. He gets up, takes the drip, and walks out of the hospital. I just laughed. I just laughed at that. Like, wow, they will put anything on TV. Anything on TV. If you're in that situation, you're not going anywhere. You'll sit there and do what they tell you. You'll lie there and do what they tell you. GoFundMe, pride. The whole time I was at Cornell Wild, I didn't move my bowels once. I was so constipated, it was ridiculous. Pride from a GoFundMe, please.
So in your case, right, because you experienced one of the more fortunate cases where you had finances to assist.
Yes.
How do you think that not having to worry about your finances and your bills affected your healing process?
Okay, I have an answer to that. Kessler Rehabilitation Center taught me a lot. They didn't just give you pills and keep you in the bed. They built me from the ground up. They taught me that the tripod of stroke recovery is treatment, lifestyle, and support. So let me go through the treatment is understanding why you are there and understanding why they're doing to you what they're doing and why you have to go to the rehab and why you have to go to the physical therapy. And when you go to the physical therapy, if you're in there for an hour, get an hour's worth of work done. If you're in the cognitive therapy, get an hour's worth of work done. And I made it a point. If I was with a therapist for an hour, we got an hour's worth of work done. If it was physical therapy, I was dressed and ready for therapy 30 minutes before time came to wheel me to the therapy room or waiting for my walker before they got me to the therapy room. So I attacked my treatment. I didn't just wait for the treatment to come to me. I attacked it. I told them I'm a pit bull. Lifestyle. What helped me, according to my brother, is I've never abused myself. I've never been someone who did not take care of myself. And that helped me. I have an acquaintance who was a smoker before his stroke. I went right back to it afterwards. And unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. So that also helped me. Support. My wife and my mom. How many times have you heard me mention my wife and my mom and my brothers? We were like a fist, like this. And also I had people all over the planet pulling for me. If you have financial worries, it will affect all of these things. Financial worries will affect your approach to treatment. Financial worries will affect your lifestyle. Financial worries will affect your acceptance of support. If your support cannot get to you to visit, imagine if my wife and mother could not visit me. What would I have done for my recovery? How long would I have been in ICU?
It would make things harder.
Yes. Imagine if I have financial worries for the treatment. I still have alarms on my phone and my iPad and everything to take my pills. And I can still get my pills regularly. They're covered by insurance. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about paying. No, I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about paying for it. If you have financial worries, that is affected. Now, lifestyle. If I have if I have financial worries, do I really care about getting back to the push-ups I used to do? Getting I make a joke about I want to get back into male modeling. I was never a male model, but a 54-year-old male model is a ridiculous notion. But I can joke about that because I don't have to joke about where my next meal is coming from or where my next treatment is coming from. So there's that also. So the financial worries obviously affects the tripod of stroke recovery. That's my answer to that.
So like at the end of the day, it's like if your finances are affected, like basically, essentially your whole life.
Yes. That's my personal belief, and that is an experience that I am glad to say I don't fully appreciate because I didn't have to deal with it. I'm not saying we're living in a lap of luxury. I'm saying we do not have financial worries. And again, the stroke will bring everything to stark relief. Like, what do we really need? What do we really, really, really need? And that's it.
So for someone who is facing a similar diagnosis, or like their family is currently facing a similar diagnosis, what advice would you give to them regarding how to manage things from a financial perspective or from like an emotional perspective to get through this season?
The emotional, I can't answer. Do not let the patient know how scared you are. If you're a caregiver, do not let the patient know how scared you are. Do not. Because the patient is not emotionally equipped to process the information. No matter how brave this patient normally is, it's not like a broken leg. It is a broken brain. So do not let the patient know how scared you are. Do not share that information because you might kill the person. That's me being blunt. Honesty is not the best policy. That's what I'll say. Now, financially, I would say take full advantage of employee medical benefits at your workplace. That's all I can say. I can't say anything more than that. Thank God I don't have much of an answer on that. I'm very aware of the fact that how blessed I am not to have much of an answer on that one.
So now we're gonna transition into how you started your graphics company. Like, how did it come about and what does it represent in your life at this moment?
So it's very, very interesting that is your last point of discussion because it's kind of funny how the graphics company came. I graduated college, this is going to date me here, in 1997. I started college.
Oh my God, that's when I was born.
I started college. Let me blow your mind. I started college in 1987. So it took me a long time to get my degree. And there are many, many reasons for that. Many, 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 many reasons for that. But I did graduate magna cum laude. So it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yes.
And then I got my MBA after that. So I was working in the construction management industry and I realized I needed something else. And I've always been an artist from I was a baby, from I was in high chair. And I mean, I was born in Scotland, and I got reunited with my old babysitter back then. She saw someone with the name Okewole. So he had this graphics company on the internet, and she remembered this little black African kid that she used to look after, who was always scribbling with crayons. She says, it has to be the same guy. And she reached out to me, and we're in contact now. Wow. She knew my parents were the students in Scotland. She saw that this guy with the same last name is a graphic artist, And when he was a baby, he was always scribbling with crayons in his high chair. She says it has to be the same person. So that's how long I've been doing the art thing. I started the graphics company as an escape from corporate America because I needed separate headspace. By weird coincidence, the employer I had at the time I had the stroke, the CEO of the company was caught in corporate malfeasance and got in trouble with the Department of Justice. So the company went belly up. And that is why I'm not on any kind of long-term disability now. Also, my employer before that, WeWork, was an international failure, and they went belly up. So back to back, I've had employers go belly up on me. So right now, the graphics company has become my lifeline to sanity and mental health. It has been a blessing to my life. It's my lifeline to sanity and mental health.
So, because I know when we had previously spoken, you said that when you experienced a stroke, you realized that you lost your ability to draw.
Yes.
So can you expand on that a little bit and how you got to like getting back into it to grow the graphic?
So when I came home, no, I realized I'd lost the ability when I was still at the rehab center. And the dawning of it was so weird. It was like I'd always had a third eye in my brain. And for the first time ever, that eye was closed. And it was only when the eye closed, I realized it had been there in the first place. I said, oh, I can't draw. And I tried. And the thing about the Kessler Rehab Center, I made it known to them, I can't draw anymore. And they enrolled me in this program to start exploring my motor skills with my fingers. And here in my studio, I have the first completed drawing I ever did in the Kessler Rehab Center. I brought it home with me and stuck it up on the door to remind me of how far I've come. Compared to what I do now, it's nothing. But over time, gradually, the skills started coming back. And that was another, you remember I talked earlier about it was deceptive?
Yeah.
My appearance was deceptive. I started doing little bits of artwork and people say, hey, Roger's getting better. No. There's still a lot of development going and I still struggle with things with technique that I used to do automatically before, you know? So I knew how the ideas used to come to me before, and it took me a long time, easily 2 years for my brain to get back to what it was before. So I've been out of the rehab center well over a year before I felt like creatively I was operating at my pre-stroke level. And the funny thing is now I'm doing works that are in advance of what I was doing before the stroke.
So you said that like it's currently like your lifeline, not just for you, I guess like financially, but also for you mentally. So how are you able to take it from it being your escape from work and life to being what it is right now? Because I remember last time we spoke, you mentioned that you ship to different places around like the States, and you know, you've been growing your social media page. So I'm assuming that you're getting like orders.
That's a fantastic question. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing to the things you will do when you're a pitbull at this thing called life, and you don't have a 9 to 5 job getting in the way of what you really want to do. Because the same way I attacked therapy, once the job went away, I attacked my company the same way. So at the time when I lost the job, I didn't lose the job. The job disappeared. I refuse to say I lost the job. The job disappeared. I could not ship internationally. I had to shut down my t-shirt operation because I could not produce t-shirts profitably. Once the job was in the process of disappearing, I got myself certified as a website designer. And I started applying that to different projects I was doing. And when the job disappeared, I built up the company so I could make up a business model where I could create apparel. I do more on the t-shirts. I do hoodies and tank tops. I could create apparel profitably. And I already had a poster and print store that I rejuvenated. I went back to that and I synchronized the two, the apparel and the poster and print stores. I made them seamless. And all that is because I was able to devote my mental space to my business wholly. So I've always said that you have to make chicken salad whether God gives you chicken meat or chicken shit. Excuse my language.
So it's like there's always a light.
Yes.
Darkness somewhere. Like if you keep digging enough,
yes,
see the beauty in all of it somehow.
Yes. I'll say this. When you're in there, I still remember when I was in rehab, and you know those parallel bars, the parallel bars they have, yes. And they wheeled me up to the parallel bars, and the lady says to me, "You gotta walk the length." I said, "What? Yeah, I'm very arrogant. I pull myself out of the wheel. Yeah, what? Walk."
Like, holding the parallel bars. What do you mean?
I hold the okay, okay. All right. By the time I won't even say I took 3 steps. I'm like, all right, here we go. So I remember she's a small lady, she's small but very strong. These therapists are very, very, very strong. She wedged her head and her shoulder under my armpit, and boom, she holds me, and I'm like, and I'm walking. She's got me, and I'm walking, and I'm saying to myself, I'm going to be walking this length myself, not next week, but eventually. And one thing about the stroke, it'll teach you patience. I'm not by nature a patient person, but you'll be patient. Because I'm not going to say I'll do it the next week or anything. No. When my body was good and ready to do it, I did it. But I did it though. You know? I eventually did it.
So much, Roger, for sharing your story with me and sharing your story with the other people that are going to come across this story and this video. And I'm truly honored because you're my very first person who opened up your hearts to share your story with me publicly.
I want to say this. I sincerely hope that nothing I say smacks of hubris or being overly braggadocious. I tend to be very confident, but I've suffered debilitating, between the job loss and the stroke, I've suffered debilitating periods of feeling unmanned. I've been dealing with a lot, and I hope no one takes away from this situation that I'm big-headed. I'm not big-headed at all. I am very, very hopeful for the future, and I remain resolute in my success. Resolute that I will be a victory after all of this. I remain resolute.
You know, and this is something that it was not on the questions that I asked you, but if you feel like sharing about it, but it was just like you were, you know, like the man, and in the sense of what a man is in society, he's like strong, he's the provider, he's the protector. But when this happened to you, you had to lean on your wife. And so what was that like, and how did your wife uplift you during the season? Because I know she was also sensitive to you.
Meg, you said I told you I was not going to cry.
Oh, sorry.
My wife went over and above. Over and above. Over and above. The thing she did, I mean, my mom told me that my wife did things for me that she would not have done. My mom would not have done for my dad. And my mom loved my dad unfailingly. But my mom is my wife's biggest fan because of what she saw my wife do for me. My wife had to bathe me. I mean, my wife is quite slender, so that's no mean task.
Yeah.
But you know how these disabled bathrooms are? I built them, so I know how they are. So they have the bar. She wheeled me into the bathroom. I could just about get myself with the bar onto that seat they have. And my wife bathed me. And when she's bathing me, I'm thinking about wedding vows. And I'm saying to myself, by God's grace, I'll never have to do this for you. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I'll never have to do this for you. By God's grace. You'll never be in this situation that I have to do this for you. By God's grace. Because you're so helpless. So helpless. And she's bathing me. And everything gets magnified when you're in that situation. Everything gets magnified. So her bathing me was like me winning the freaking lottery. I don't have to stink anymore. You feel like a human being. It was more than the bath. As I'm talking to you right now, I'm envisioning that evening. It was more than the bath. So I told the water heater story. In this house, my wife is a very liberated woman, but it's very clear that if it can leak or can catch fire or requires tools or involves security, it is my job. And before the stroke, something went wrong with our water heater. And that much I did remember. I didn't remember it in the hospital. I didn't remember it when I was in IC at all. But by the time I got to rehab, I remembered it. And I'd ask her what happened with the water heater. And in the time I was out, she somehow managed to get somebody in to look at the water heater. And give me a second. And I'm going to have to leave soon. Sorry. And she told me it's sorted. And at that point in time, my brain was not developed enough for me to understand what sorted meant, because I did not even remember what's wrong with water in the first place. But her telling me it was taken care of was just a weight off my mind. I was able to say, okay. And here you go. Some of that money might have been the GoFundMe money to pay for the guy to come in and fix the water heater. So that's the kind of thing that was taken care of. You know, she took care of all that stuff. It's very, very humbling. And the time, it goes beyond that. The time I've been out of work has also been very, very humbling. Also been very humbling.
I know that we're short on time, but thank you so much, Roger.
All right, Meg. Thank you very much.